is Rachael, and today we're reading 3 poems by Edgar Allan Poe. Before we begin, we'd like to give you a brief introduction to the man himself. Edgar Allan Poe is most known for his Gothic short stories and poems of the macabre. Poe was born in Boston in 1809. Sadly, his parents died before he was 3 years old of tuberculosis. Death becomes a lead character in his literary works. Poe's first sweetheart, Elmira Royster, married someone else when Poe left for school at the University of Virginia. Poe was both heartbroken and couldn't afford to stay in school. In 1836, he married his first cousin, Virginia Clem, when she was just 13 and he was 27. They had a loving relationship, though some sources say they behaved more like siblings. Virginia died of tuberculosis when she was 24, just like his mother. Poe wrote for magazines, allowing him to publish his short stories, as well as write scathing book reviews. His work has been in print since 1827, with a slew of Gothic literary classics, including The Telltale Heart. Arthur Conan Doyle even coined Edgar Allan Poe as the father of the detective tale, since Poe introduced the detective genre with the Murders in the Rue Morgue. The Raven was the poem that gave him national fame. He eventually became engaged to his first love, Elmira, again after she became a widow. However, the marriage never took place because Poe mysteriously died at the age of 40 in Baltimore on October 7, 1849. Rumors were that it was alcoholism, but some believe he may have died from rabies. Or it could have been Elmira's brothers, as she would be losing part of her inheritance money if she were to remarry. His literary rival, Rufus Griswold, wrote Poe's first biography. Poe had heavily critiqued Griswold's books, and so the biography was filled with lies. This act of revenge instead helped boost Poe's sales and notoriety. Stay with us while we share 3 poems by Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe was paid just $9 in 1845 for The Raven. In today's dollars, that'd be $307. Because of copyright law, publications didn't have to pay him to reprint his poem. As a result, Poe made very little money from The Raven. He became so recognizable that children followed him in the street, flapping their arms and cawing at him. Poe would then turn around and say, "Nevermore," causing the children to run away shrieking. Poe was inspired by a real-life raven named Grip. Grip was owned by Charles Dickens and was also a character in Dickens's Barnaby Rudge. Grip's taxidermy body watches over the rare books department at Philadelphia's Free Library. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door, "only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late-night visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more. deep into that darkness peering. Long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with a mini flirt and flutter in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door. Perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. This ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door. Bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word it did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, "Doubtless," said I, "what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of nevermore." But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy in the smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, "Nevermore." This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. "Wretch," I cried, "thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget the lost Lenore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Prophet," said I, "thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Prophet said I think of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore. Tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's plutonium shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above the door. Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form off my door. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
Hi, my name is Ann Howard, and I work in the circulation department. I'm the assistant manager there. I am going to be reading Dreamland by Edgar Allan Poe. This poem was first published in 1844 and then again republished in 1845. It's pretty much about a traveler's journey through a dreamland or a nightmare, just depending on how you feel about it. The traveler pretty much describes what he sees and how he feels as he's going through this place that's out of space and out of time. There are a couple of words in there that we don't really use, so I looked up the definition. The first one is eidolon, and that means phantom. The other one is fuli, which is the most northern part of a region or something like that. All right, so. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright. I've reached these lands but newly, from an ultimate dim fooly, from a wild, weird clime that lieth sublime, out of space, out of time. Bottomless vales and boundless floods, and chasms and caves and titan woods, that forms that no man can discover, for the tears that drip all over, mountains toppling evermore into seas without a shore, seas that restlessly aspire, surging unto skies of fire, lakes that endlessly outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, their still waters, still and chilly, from the snows of the lolling lily. By the lakes that thus outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, their sad waters, sad and chilly, with the snows of the lolling lily, by the mountains near the river, murmuring lowly, murmuring ever, by the gray woods, by the swamp, where the toad and the newt encamp, by the dismal tarns and pools, where dwells the ghouls, by each spot the most unholy, in each nook most melancholy, the traveler meets aghast, sheeted memories of the past, shrouded forms that start and sigh as they pass to wander by. White-robed forms of friends long given in agony to earth and heaven. For the heart whose woes are legion, 'tis a peaceful, soothing region. For the spirit that walks in shadow, 'tis it's an Eldorado. But the traveler traveling through it may not dare openly view it. Never its mysteries are exposed to the weak human eye enclosed. So wills its king who hath forbid the uplifting of the frigid lid. And thus the sad soul that here passes, behold, but is through darkened glasses. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright. I have wandered home but newly from an ultimate dim fooly. Ooh.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm the Community Relations and Marketing Coordinator for the Bay County Public Library, and the poem that I have selected is The City and the Sea. Lo, death has reared himself a throne in a strange city lying alone, far down within the dim west, where the good and the bad and the worst and the best have gone to their eternal rest. Their shrines and palaces and towers, time-eaten towers, and tremble not, resemble nothing that is ours. Around by lifting winds forgot, residedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie. No rays from the holy heaven come down on the long night time of that town, but light from out the lurid sea streams up the torrents silently, gleams up the pinnacles far and free, up domes, up spires, up kingly halls, up fanes, up Babylon-like walls, up shadowy, long-forgotten bowers, of sculptured ivy and stone towers, up many and many a marvelous shrine, whose wreathed friezes intertwine the violet, and the vine, residedly beneath the sky. The melancholy waters lie, so blend the turrets and shadows there, that all seem pendulous in the air, while from a proud tower in the town, death looks gigantically down. There are open fans and gaping graves, yawn level with the luminous waves, but not the riches there that lie in each idol's diamond eye, not the gaily jeweled dead tempt the waters from their bed, for no ripples curl, alas. Along that wilderness of glass, no swelling tell that winds may be upon some far-off happier sea, no heavings hint the winds have been on seas less hideous serene. But lo, a stir is in the air, the wave, there is a movement there, as if the towers had thrust aside in slightly sinking the dull tide, as if their tops had feebly given a void within the filmy heaven. The waves have now a redder glow, the hours in breathing faint and low, and when amid no earthly moans down, down, the town shall settle hence, hell rising from 1,000 thrones shall do it in reverence. So in some ways, The City in the Sea complements the poem that was read before, Dreamland, just with some of the overlapping imagery. And the final version of The City in the Sea was published in 1845 off of an earlier piece called The Doomed City, and that this is a city of sin that has sunken to the bottom of the ocean. The city is a personification of death, how very Gothic of Poe, and there is a division between good and bad and heaven and hell. It may be a reference to the fictional Atlantis, and I selected the poem because there are real underwater ghost towns, which I think is fascinating. And there's even one inside of the Banff National Park in Canada, and it's inside of Lake Minnewanka, which before it was flooded in 1912 by a power plant, it was a summer resort in the early 1800s. And so everything has been really well preserved and in those cold waters. And you can look up pictures and you can maybe visualize what the city in the sea may have looked like. And that's it.